Hey everybody, I'm Peter Merholz. I am a independent consultant focused on design teams, design orgs. Among other things, I'm the co-author of Org Design for Design Orgs. Today, we have with us three leaders of brand design teams for a conversation we're calling Org Design for Brand Design Orgs. The conversation started with Leanne, and she'll be joining us in a moment or sharing some material in a moment, reaching out to me and saying, "Hey, I'm a brand design person who's read your book and have a lot of thoughts." And she shared some of these thoughts with me, and I was intrigued and felt that it would be good to have a conversation around them, in particular with two other brand design leaders that I've worked with. Erin Pinkley, the VP of Creative at Zendesk, with whom I did a project a couple years ago, working with her and her team on establishing a charter for her organization. And then Jess Rosenberg, now Director of Brand Design at Webflow, who I've also did some charter work with and some just general thought partnership with. And so what we have today is a conversation primarily with these three around this idea of how do you organize your brand design teams. I think there's a lot of conversation around organizing product and UX teams, and at least I haven't been as aware of the conversation around brand design. So I'm looking forward to that today. So I think what we'll do to get started is just have Leanne take over, share her screen. Let me stop my sharing. Leanne, are you able to share screen?
Oh, yes,
Great.
I am.
So I'm going to go on mute while Leanne shares her thoughts. So Leanne's going to start us off. She's got some slides to kind of give us something to talk about. And then Erin and Jess will follow with kind of their reactions and their takes on it. I'll ask a couple questions, and then we'll open it up to a more general Q&A. So take it away, Leanne.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm thumbs up. You can see my screen. All good. Cool. So my name is Leanne Diaz. I am a director of brand design at Handshake. Previously, I've helped build the brand design team at Grammarly. And, in the past, I've been on brand design teams at Reddit, Crunchbase. And throughout my time in brand design, I've reported into product teams, marketing teams, brand teams, and like editorial teams. And I've worked in an agency setting as well. And throughout all of that, and over the last few years, I found myself pick this book up more than once. At first it was just for knowledge, just understanding what is the place of a design org, what does it mean to be on a design org within a business. And then over time, I started going back to it more for validation as I was starting to build a team and set up processes of my own. And then over time, I realized I'd been having a conversation with a book. I was slowly, covering my copy of the book in translucent Post-it notes about what I thought as it relates to brand design. Does it mean something? Does it not? And like just started nerding out about just about brand design, even though I didn't directly see examples that would apply to my team. And for me, it was a curiosity. It was curiosity. It's like, can this apply? Does this apply? Just trying everything, twisting and turning, trying to see if it would work and how it would work for my team. And also like looking for validation, as I said before, as I was starting to build my team. And it was also me wanting to see brand design on the map or on the org chart, if you will. So today I'm finally excited to share these like takeaways or thought starters with you and have this wider conversation with Peter himself, along with the wonderful Jessica and Erin. So let's go. So over the next 10 minutes or so, what I'll do is I'll walk you through these like high level learnings, takeaways, thought starters. and what my observations have been applying them when building brand design teams. So the themes I'll go over are team structure, contribution, and impact. So starting with team structure, I want to discuss this idea of centralized partnership. And as you know, it's one of the key concepts in the book. It's an organizational model for evolving design orgs, which is neither like embedded or centralized, which we call the agency model or creative studio in brand design. So typically brand design teams will follow one of these models, with the embedded model being quite common for smaller brand design teams in my experience. So what happens in these instances, and similar to what Peter points out in the case of product design, is this involves embedding one designer with other. If it's product design, if it's a product designer, it would involve in embedding that product designer with other product managers and engineers. So this is also a very common parallel for brand design. It happens a lot here. It's like a lot of folks might be all too familiar with this. So they've been the lone designer working on a team with other marketing channel owners and other marketing managers, and they're having to deliver across a range of different skill sets and craft expertise areas. Like for example, like there's one designer doing brand identity, as well as advertising design and interaction design, at times illustration. They'll do some of the creative strategy, publication design, and so on. And what happens as a result of this structure is there is little to non-existent design culture, and also these brand designers don't instinctively know where to plug into the product design process, and consequently what we see, and what I've seen time and time again, is product design teams and these marketing designers or marketing design teams, they drift further and further away from each other. And what happens as a result of that is, you guessed it, it's like a very fractured user experience or customer journey, if you will. So coming back to that centralized partnership, I've seen this work for brand design teams in some fashion. So with the team structure, so that designers can collaborate with their peers and they report into design managers, it creates a better environment for design. And I will say, however, this is not a one-to-one application as the original idea, where this team is subdivided into skills complete groups focusing on separate areas of like separate features or different areas of the business. Rather, this is a little bit of like and this is something we can discuss later. I've noticed in the case of brand design, the nature and the scope and the scale of projects and campaigns and things that we take to market each time and market are so varying that it has not always been it has been close to impossible to create a skills complete subgroup within the brand design team. So what I have here is more a team divided in this example based on craft expertise. It's a combination of craft expertise and the point of the customer journey that they're designing for. Yeah, let's definitely talk about this at the end. And let's then move to the second theme, which is contribution. And I will say this might have been one of my favorite takeaways, which is the idea of a mandate for design to deliver across the entire customer journey. So I want to share a little bit about how I've seen brand designs support that mandate. So also, just to take a step back, it's like brand designers that have been embedded in the past, like I discussed, it's like it's not instinctive as to how the work maps back to the customer journey. So just creating an example like this and then mapping the work of our brand design team to where they plug in and how the synchronicity of everything and like results in a seamless customer experience has been super helpful. And that is in order to meaningfully integrate these designers into these brand designers and brand design teams into the larger design org, framing it in this way has been super helpful. So here, for example, it's like everything you see in green is like where a brand design team would either play a leading role or a supporting role in tandem with other units within the design org. And you'll see, obviously, there's opportunity, or this is how I see there being opportunity for brand design teams to have an impact throughout. And lastly, another important parallel for me was about levels of scale. First, in seeing just the general criteria about how design teams can deliver at these various levels, I obviously got curious to further flesh it out as to what this means for me on a brand design team or my brand design team. And then in general, over time, it has served as a good tool for me to measure, coming into a new team, even measure the impact of my current team and like analyze where our strengths lie, or like where our focus is, and map a path to how we want to shift that. So it's like those levels of scale being surface, structure, strategy, and big picture. So first, surface level for brand design is what I would consider like the visual aesthetics part of our craft. This is just, largely operating as a service and fielding marketing design requests or design requests to make it pretty. And then one level higher for structure for brand design, I would consider the systems and organized rationale that inform what happens at the surface. This could be, maybe building audience-specific toolkits or visual systems. This is also like, I would consider this part as like where we do the design systems work for brand design. And then one level higher, this is where you would have the creative strategy for a campaign or creative concepts. And it's just, it's more at this stage framing the problem as to how, what the solution would look like rather than solving the problem itself. And then finally, what I would consider for big picture in terms of brand design is, what is like your rebrands and, helping improve customer journeys by way of brand experience, visual and verbal identities, evolving those identities, iterating on it over time. And, if strategy is framing the problem and structure and surface or solving the problem, I would think of big picture stuff more as identifying the problem space or knowing what to solve. With that high level overview, I would love to open up the conversation to Erin, Jessica, and Peter. I will hand it back over to you. Thank you all.
Excellent. This was great. First, quick question, Leanne. Will you be willing to share these slides publicly after this? There's been some questions about that in the chat. I don't think there's anything proprietary, is there?
Of course, yes.
Excellent. Okay. So next, Erin is going to reflect a bit on what Leanne has shown and also share her org design. We're going geeky today with lots of boxes and lines. So take it away, Erin.
Great, thank you, Jess. Leanne. I very, very much appreciate your thoughtful reflection of the brand design org. I also I found myself in a place where I was just completely overwhelmed and out of my depth about organizing my team at Zendesk. And so to know that there was a person who wrote a book about this just blew my mind. So I think we come from a similar place there. I very much appreciate how you are focused on the customer journey. I think that is so essential to keeping the team grounded. I think that oftentimes any company that, does org first, customers second, that what that means is that customers just feel the gaps in between the teams. And so I really, really appreciate how, that was kind of the like the way you made decisions. So I think that is wonderful. I think I was reflecting, I've been on quite a journey with my team. I've been at Zendesk for 7 years now, and seen the team grow from like 10 people to now we are like 65. So I've also grown in that time. I was an individual contributor, and now I lead the whole team. So it's been a lot of like figuring it out, hiring the experts to help us figure it out. And so I can kind of walk through the, yeah, 65 people. I can walk through, I actually found a wobbly old Miro board I can walk through that shares where we started. This was something I put together earlier this year, but this is, imagine, okay, this is literally 2013, a screenshot from 2013. Zendesk was founded with design at its heart, right? And they knew that brand would be the key differentiator for the company. And so the creative team was started as kind of like an internal agency. And so what you see here are a bunch of really talented advertising, theater background people that came together to form the Zendesk creative team. And truly the work came from like a lot of good-natured people doing great work. This was a rock band they started as an SEO strategy. It's a long story, but doing like standout work, and kind of like the way we worked was just over whiskey and a lot of trust, right? And so then in 2016, we rebranded the company. We were 15 people at the time. We did this entirely in-house. And I don't even think we had a CMO or a head of sales at this time. And so creative has always sat like underneath a chief creative officer, not connected to any org. And so we were given a lot of autonomy. And so, when it came to stakeholders and approvals, we were just on, we were ready to go. So we were, again, 15 people and did this rebrand. Great. Then came this era of the company started to grow and scale like crazy. We're talking like 200 people a month. And so what that meant is that we were drawing like the guidelines that we had suddenly just needed to serve like a hyper growth company, and it just wasn't there. And so we started making creative like this. This is not something we're proud of, but kind of like making metaphors of like our illustration style just exploded in a way that wasn't good, right? And so we were like, oh no, this is not good at all. So we reset on our charter for the team. This is we mandated the team to kind of be to remind the company of who we are, right? So it's not so much about do we have templates and everything. It's about like it's about something deeper, right? And really educating the company on what brand means and why this brand is important to their job. So this is us kind of, this is a corporate puppet we made. Anyway, just as a reminder for why, what the Zendesk soul is all about. Then in 2020, we all learned our lessons in COVID. And one of the messages, or one of the lessons we learned was that people stopped, you can't really feel, what does brand feel like when we can only meet like this, right? And so we found like things were getting even more disorganized. And so we embarked on a project to organize the team in a way that was more sustainable for the future. And that's where Peter came in. So fast forward, we are now with Peter, we developed a team charter for the creative team, which is to protect and project the personality of Zendesk. And with company-wide partnership, we distinguish, elevate, and clarify Zendesk's offering across all interactions with customers. And so this is what the team looks like today. These are the creative team is actually 5 teams. And we organize ourselves around what the rhythms of the business. And we did that because that was the most predictable org or predictable model we could, what am I saying? I'm saying, yeah, if you organize it according to products or initiatives, what that means is the team could become more unstable. And so we felt that this was the most stable org for the team. And so that's identity, digital, events, campaigns, and film. And so this is how we organize the team. And these teams are multidisciplinary, and they are, so that means writers, designers, our producers are dedicated to each of these. And then what this does for us is it makes planning and resourcing so much easier for us. Again, at 65 people, it's a lot. And we're at almost 7,000 as a company. So it's a lot. And this is where we are today. So I'm going to stop talking there. I could talk all day about this, but I think I will hand it to Jess.
Thank you. Yeah, this is so fascinating. I'm like fervently taking notes at the same time. I too really appreciate, Leanne. Thank you so much for getting this conversation started. I think starting from a place of a customer journey as a mechanism to structure teams is super smart. And it's something I actually think about a lot. I think where I personally struggled is when I've, at the companies I've been at, Cloudflare, Mural, and now at Webflow, I would come in to lead those teams, and at the company stage and the size of the team when I would start, the teams were so small when I first joined, including Webflow, to be able to kind of, structure the team in a thoughtful way like that. And even when I joined Webflow a year ago, it was myself and I think we were about like 6 or 7 on the brand studio team, separated between web and creative. And I even started thinking about like a squad model approach, like an embedded model approach. I'm like, we actually can't physically do this because we don't have enough people yet. But the thinking was there. And I've always, like, since then, I've always been thinking about it. And then when we started this conversation and I saw that beautiful diagram you created, and my team is now bigger, which I can walk you through in a moment, it actually kind of catapulted my thinking into our team's organization for next year and how we might evolve, not so much like the team org structure itself, but thinking more in terms of like, would a squad model approach be possible? And I can share my screen. I don't have an incredible timeline like Erin, though I will soon. Hopefully I too will be at Webflow for 7 years. However, I can show and speak to where my team has started and kind of what we look like now, as well as how we interact with the rest of the company. So this is kind of a large org chart, but I'll zoom out a bit and kind of talk to how it's structured here. So this top level is the marketing org. So the brand studio team at Webflow reports into marketing. And actually the other day when I was building this, I realized that our team, we're about 16 people on brand studio, including myself, and marketing is about 35. So we're actually over 50% of the size of marketing, which is kind of incredible and not my typical experience that I've had at other tech companies. And I can also speak to that as well. But our closest partners are product marketing, content, demand gen, growth, integrated marketing ops, kind of like your tried and true marketing team suite. And then we, of course, have the other orgs that I think at the company's current stage, our size today, we aren't interacting with too many teams outside of marketing. However, I very much predict, and this is also based on past experience, that we will evolve into the company's internal agency, where we will start to see more, partnerships and collaboration with education and community, our people and HR teams around our internal brand, exec leadership, sales, et cetera, and especially product and product design, which is starting to ramp up more recently. And so the way that my team is structured today, we have a few different functions. And I think it's important for me to call out that today's structure is very much based on how the team was structured before I started, as well as some recent evolutions that have, come to fruition. I think now we're at a really good place to, like myself and my leadership team, to evaluate, are these structures still working? Because they're historical, are they still right? And we're very much at that inflection point right now. But the way we're currently set up is we have a web team. And I think what's really unique about Webflow is that our web designers are both really strong visual designers, and they also develop and build in Webflow. So we don't have any like marketing developers or marketing engineers. Our designers are designing, building, shipping, all in Webflow, which is pretty unique and special. We have a copy function on the team today, and this has been a recent addition. Copy previously sat on the content team. About a few months ago, we decided that because the copy function was so brand focused, and they collaborated so much with our designers anyway, it just made sense for them to be closer to our org and be part of our rituals, processes, meetings, crits, all that fun stuff. We have one mighty yet powerful and talented principal brand designer. And as we're ramping up our brand efforts this year going into next year, this principal is leading efforts around an upcoming brand refresh. They're collaborating really closely with partners on product and engineering and across the company. And right now, it's an interesting, they're kind of on this island, but not. They're orgs on an island, but we actually all collaborate really closely with one another. So from an org standpoint, this person is a team of one today. However, I hope they don't feel that way. And then creative ops is a new function that I brought onto the team when I joined that I'm really excited about, and I think has made a tremendous impact in the way the entire brand studio operates, functions, collaborates with our cross-functional partners. When I first joined Webflow, the team had 0 project managers, and it blew my mind at how just like much incredible work they were able to get done and on time. The designers were also very tired, and so taking that responsibility away from them for the most part has been really helpful and has helped us be way more agile as a team as well. And then our creative pod consists of brand designers, illustrators, visual designer, generalists, all really strong, designers and creative minds. And we've grouped them into this team called Creative. Is that the best name for a team? Probably not, considering my entire team is creative. So we're likely looking at renaming this pod into something a little bit more specific. And this is also like a historical input from before I started. But this team works on, supporting the various marketing initiatives like event branding, campaign development, swag, employer brand, product marketing, social media, the tried and true, marketing projects. And since, I mentioned that my team is more than half the size of marketing, Webflow is a very design-led, creative-led company. One of our main audiences are designers. And so having a team that is able to deliver on all of these initiatives, while also like having quality be at the forefront. Like we really take a lot of time to make sure everything we put out into the world is like as perfect as we deem it so. And this is really the first team that I've ever been on where quality, especially the tech company, has been so revered. And so that's probably why we have as many folks as we do. Also, I will say that we're about to embark on a rebrand or a brand refresh. And I think it's interesting, like when you think about org design and a company doesn't yet have a robust style guide that both the team and the entire company can refer to, it's really challenging to be able to operate in an embedded way. And I'll talk a little bit about how I'm starting to think about org design and like the squad models for next year. This world, I think, will operate really beautifully when we do have that style guide and that source of truth. Otherwise, I anticipate a lot of like back and forth and a lot of like initial ramp up around like, what's on brand? Is this right? Is this right? How can we experiment? Like, where do we know what the guardrails are? So a lot of that's currently happening, which is why we're embarking on a refresh. But in a perfect world, with a beautiful style guide that we can all align on, I think a squad model where you rely on the org structure I just shared, yet you disband and focus teams like you're seeing here that revolve around specific initiatives. So I'm kind of pulling the different core themes and initiatives from both marketing and across the company and creating squad teams that involve folks across Brand Studio, my team, as well as like for campaigns, for example, we want to make sure that that squad consists of a product marketing manager, a performance marketing manager, the person that's actually like measuring the campaigns, who can advise on best practices, an SEO lead, a demand gen manager. And then similarly for brand identity and systems, we have a cohort from the Brand Studio team, but then we also start to pull in folks from across the company. So a design systems designer from product, front-end engineer, design ops lead, education designer. We have a separate education design team that sits on our university org. So we start to think about org design, not only in terms of how we're orged from a headcount perspective and like team and reporting structure perspective, but also how we operationalize the projects and the initiatives in which we're all working together to accomplish. So this is something I've actually just started thinking through. And I think the teams are big enough now that we might be able to start experimenting with this early next year. Yeah, that's my spiel.
Excellent. If you could actually leave this, leave that up, bring that back. Because I would love to hear from Erin and Leanne. This is one of the questions I had. So I come at this a little bit as, you know, an unfrozen caveman design org designer who, because I focus in the world of product, I'm not as steeped in the brand design world. If you could go to the squads, actually, because one of the questions I had, and I'm curious, again, Leanne and Erin, your take on this, right? In product design, we have this concept of the three in a box, right? You've got your product manager, your designer, and your engineer as this kind of triad. Maybe you have data or analytics. And the idea is to have a really stable relationship between these people that lasts a long period of time. And I think historically, one of the challenges for brand design is that it was a short order cook model of a ticket comes in, we throw together a team, we execute, or an individual, as Leanne points out, we execute on that ticket, we send it back, and we're not developing those long-term relationships over time. We're not really developing that partnership. And I'm wondering, Leanne and Erin, what your thoughts are on how to evolve your orgs to establish these longer-term partnerships at ideally multiple levels, right? So at Erin, at your level as a VP with other VPs, and then your leads and their folks, are you able to move to that model? Is that even feasible?
That's a great question. I think that's a lot of the work we did in our latest reorg, is to really define who those squads are. I think in marketing, of course, like marketing is our number one customer, if you will. Like I said, marketing has rapid growth, but also rapid turnover. And marketing teams traditionally, I think, experience that. I'd love to hear how other companies experience that, but oftentimes it might be, yeah, one project went really, really well with a product marketing person, but then they hired 6 more people, right? And so then how do you take the goodness and the good experience you had on project A and then translate that to projects B, C, D, E, F, right? And so I think at my level, I'm finding it is essential that I have a solid relationship with other VP leaders so that we can, align and have that same, like, set expectations together, read the brief together, make sure we're approving together. And so that way the expectations are set across both teams. And so because those other relationships might be a little more transient, and I think we need to just I think there's just a certain level of comfort that marketing and brand design teams need to have with that, just because and also the timelines are shorter. The relationships you're talking about with the 3 in a box, those are sometimes 6-month projects, right? Versus in marketing, it might be 3 days. So I think there's a difference there too, but would love to hear what others are experiencing.
Yeah, at Grammarly, for example, for a long period of time, we were that team that had established connections on the marketing team. It's whether that was for, say, the blog and social media, or designing brand experiences on the product and so on. But what happened over a period of time is those designers focused on or looking toward marketing and focused on different areas they're in, were not necessarily every time leveraging the skills and the craft expertise of others on the team, like illustrators and so on, and at the same time building identical skills complete little units within the brand design team was not possible. So I in the past have tried to strike a balance there, and also evaluating in the case of marketing teams that are divided by marketing channel, it's how much to over index on those relationships, because if we're if we want to effectively take something to market, or if we want to effectively build awareness about something, it's going to require everyone on the marketing team to do that, versus just only a part of the marketing team working with a part of the brand design team. So I think, and this is something I still think about, but I do know it's having tried the other model, it's where there's a long-term relationship, but then it even starts to look a little bit too close to an embedded model, even while the brand design team being its own thing. I think I've come to understand it's a thing of balance for brand, especially for brand design teams, not to over index on marketing structures.
Sort of, I want to follow on that, and then there's some questions in the chat that have come up. But someone asked, let me make sure, Louise, is there an equivalent triad? So product design is part of this triad: engineering, design, product management. Is there any, maybe not today, but maybe the question is, should there be some type of equivalent set of relationships? Maybe it's not a triad, right? When I'm looking here at Jess, your diagram, I see product marketing manager a lot, right? Mm-hmm. Is product marketing manager to a brand design lead what a product manager is to a product design lead? Is that an oversimplification, right? Because if I think back also to Erin, what you had, identity, campaigns, events, video, there's such a range of effort, whereas product designers are building products, whereas brand designers are working on a lot of different kinds of contexts. Maybe there isn't that kind of stability. Jess and then Erin.
I think for brand design and internal creative teams, I think it really depends on the type of initiative that you're talking about. So for a product launch, for example, it makes sense for a product marketing manager a design lead or design manager, and I think like an engine, like our version of it is like a web designer slash developer, to be working on how we're bringing that feature or product story to market. The responsibility then of the product marketing manager is to liaise with the EPD teams, engineering product design, to ensure that we're telling those stories in a way that accurately reflects the goals of the product or feature. For something like a brand campaign, for example, that's more high level, and we're communicating the high level value of the product, not necessarily a specific product or feature, I think a PMM would be less involved in that cohort, maybe more as an advisory role. And the main, the triad would be a brand strategist, a performance marketing manager, and the creative lead. If I were to choose 3 people, there's obviously, I think, a few more that would be part of like a DAISY or like a rapid framework, but I think it just varies on the type of project.
Yeah, that's perfectly stated, Jess. It's very similar at Zendesk. I think that I recently saw like a similar presentation about how product marketing thinks about their org, similar to this. I mean, every team thinks they're the center of the universe. So, and so I think product marketing also feels like very similar to brand design, right? Where it is very much like it is we talk about brand design as kind of the connective tissue in the company, because it touches so many different, it is the brand experience, right? So product marketing similarly thinks about themselves that way, I've heard. And I think I think that's why like their role can change depending on what the what that touch point or project is. So for example, on a web project like product launch, you're making the new product landing page. They're like your number one stakeholder. They're the expert in the product. But then in terms of like, let's say an event, like your user conference, they're just weighing in on like the CEO's keynote, right? To make sure he's talking about that product launch accurately. And so they become, and so again, like you kind of dial up their role depending on what that touch point is.
So I have Leanne, your deck here, and I'm going to pull up what for me is the money diagram. I think you can all see this, the journey diagram. And I'm pulling it up because we had some questions around, and I'll use Brett's question. I had the same question, but I'll use Brett's question. I have a question about brand design partnering with product design. Often the two are very siloed. What are some of the best practices for bridging the gap? So I would love, I have an opportunity for all 3 of you to share, but Leanne, since this is your drawing and you've clearly been thinking about, brand growth, product, these intersections and interactions, I'm wondering your thoughts on how to bridge the gap between brand and product marketing, or brand and product design.
Of course. Yeah. In the past, one of the obvious ways in which I've done that is have like even a product designer on a brand design team. We tried this at Grammarly and it worked wonderfully. So this is even like a person that is helping bring brand experience into the products. They're a product designer on the brand design team, and like the brand design person in the room when product development happens. So that has really helped, whether that is, just making sure there's like like speaking in our brand voice to understanding and identifying, and then knowing where to bring delight or where to bring continuity for the user and consistency, or even identifying opportunities, working even on growth experiments with the growth designers and growth as it happens on the product side, to help like bring the brand into those experiences as well. And another thing, another way in which I've done this with some success in the past that isn't quite obvious here, is through design systems, like pairing the identity work on the brand design team with the design systems work on the product design team. These are like 2 peas in a pod, if you will. It's like it's important for these 2 teams to even kind of like have like a dotted line or like have a connection between the two of them. I even see like this as being the shared wall, if it's like between a brand design team and the product design teams, like the design systems and the brand identity teams, they like share that wall. So just like keeping them as close together as possible, especially on teams where like we're evolving brands or like there's a refresh oncoming. It's always been helpful to keep these two teams close together.
Erin
Yeah.
or Jess?
I think for me, it comes down to like 3 areas. And this is what I've also observed just working at various tech companies throughout my career, where product design and brand design were on 2 separate planets that never were in the same orbit. And it really starts with relationships, especially at the leadership level. And if you're a brand design leader, it is crucial that you are regularly meeting and talking to the product design leader or leaders. And the second is, as you're having those conversations, identifying the opportunity areas that exist for intentional collaboration. So at Webflow, when I first joined, the brand studio team was actually part of the product org with product design. However, it was very like the 2 teams were still not talking. It was like a symbolic gesture that the 2 teams were part of the same org. And once we separated away from marketing and we were able to like clearly identify opportunity areas, we're actually able to intentionally collaborate versus it just being symbolic and part of the same team and maybe having some coffee chats here and there. I think the third area is, you know, those design leaders who are talking and identifying the opportunity areas is like actually planning together and being proactive about activating your teams to collaborate, to put certain initiatives that involve both disciplines on the roadmap. Otherwise, it's not going to get done. No one on marketing, I promise you, is going to file an Asana ticket asking for more cohesive brand integration for, you know, throughout a product experience. This is something that I've found design leaders, brand and product really need to be proactive about and evangelize within their orgs, because no one else is going to ask you to do it.
I love what you just said, Jess. I think, yes, so much of what we do as creative people is like, no one would ever ask us to do it. I think the other, I completely agree. We went through a very similar experience at Zendesk, where we were one creative team that was product design and brand design. And now we are, you know, aligned to our orgs. We sit in marketing now, and product design sits in product. I think the other thing that's, you know, I would add a fourth to your 3 is vision. Like, I think the Zendesk product really suffered from lack of vision for many, many years, because it was growing kind of on, like, it was kind of, I don't want to say coasting, but kind of like it was, we kept adding features and features and features built on like the vision that started 15 years ago, right? And so we recently hired an SVP of product design that's bringing a lot of that vision power that, you know, and I think that's like, it's beyond relationships. That's about like, what are we all like, okay, once the relationships are solid, like, what are we working towards? And I think that's bringing a lot of clarity to the team, and less like, less of the, you know, the tedious stuff like happening in the teams, but it's really kind of like, okay, like resetting on where we're going. And I think that's been a giant help to helping us work more smoothly together.
What if any, what's your involvement? I'm assuming that even, you know, you're essentially a peer to this new SVP of product design. What is your involvement, if any, in helping them establish this vision? Is there some active working relationship, or is it more consultative, or how does that work out?
Yeah, right now it's pretty consultative. I'm working on a massive brand refresh. He's working on like a kind of like a paradigm shift for the product. And so right now we're both embarking on like massive initiatives. And so it's kind of like we're doing this to, at an arm's length, but connected. So, and the teams are finding ways to meaningfully connect. So like if we have a systems person in brand, we're making sure that systems person is talking to product design and making sure those relationships are solid. But yeah, right now it's kind of just making sure we're connected, communicating, connecting regularly, things like that.
Excellent. There's a question in here that kind of relates a bit to the Asana comment that Jess, you had earlier, like no product marketing person is going to put a tag in for the kind of much of the kind of work that you do. There's a question that Ray asked, how do you measure business value and ROI for the CFO type organization? And some people +1 that, and I'm kind of curious, another way I think of thinking about this, or potentially a related way. Well, there's Alicia asked, how does your team measure quality? Because I think quality came up in your discussion, Jess. Struggling with a very system-focused product design team who maybe is not strong visually. Innate gut measurement might have a large delta per person, right? And so when you're working in brand, if we're looking at this diagram, there's a lot of things that you can quantify fairly easily from brand and marketing work in terms of conversion rates or acquisition rates. But then there's what we all know to be the headroom of the bare minimum of conversion and the associated brand value that you guys all want to be realizing, right? If we think about, because they're obviously coming to mind, companies like Apple or Coca-Cola or whatever, where the brand is worth so much more than like a transactional value. But it can be really hard to quantify, identify what some of that additional value is. And so, not kind of reaching here for a question, but how do you, what is expected of you in terms of communicating back value that your team is delivering? And are you aligned or assigned measurements and other hard values? And then how are you helping others understand that sometimes hard to describe headroom of value and impact that you're having that might not be as easy to quantify? Anyone of the three of you have an initial thought there you want to share?
I'll start. Okay, there's something we just recently went through at Zendesk. We have partnered with Interbrand, who's like this amazing global branding agency. They have something called the Brand Valuation Index. This is fascinating work, but they have this formula where they evaluate the value, like the dollar amount that your brand is worth on a spectrum of all the brands in the world. So let's say if Amazon is worth like billions of dollars, and let's say then Hydro Flask is worth less than that, right? And so they actually have like mathematicians that work on this, and I'm not doing their work enough service talking about it now, but it's incredible work, and we had the opportunity to work with them and evaluate how well the Zendesk brand is doing. And so at the end of that, you get like this dollar amount that your brand is worth. Then they take that and they say like how much of your revenue is or how much of your brand value contributes to your annual revenue. And so then you're kind of left with this number of like, it's like a 30% of the decision and 30% of the value of your brand. And so it was, oh, thank you, Tam. Yes, I think, and so basically you come out with like a state of the union on the value of brand. And I think communicating that far and wide just shows that, yes, it matters. It does contribute. Are the numbers exactly right? Who knows? But it's that like, it's an important ingredient of the work that the company is doing. From there, it's like, it just takes a lot of the emotion out of it. It takes a lot of that subjectivity of like, does this even matter? Does it matter if it looks good? Like, yes, it matters. Okay. Right. And I think that just takes a lot of that weight off of it. and then the work just becomes about like making sure you're working on the right priorities. So at Zendesk, we've just done a lot of like, again, with so many requests coming in, we just make sure we're working on revenue generating projects first. We're making sure we have the systems and resources in place to do those projects, so that we can allocate our resources. And then we make sure that we're actually ready to execute on them. So I could go on and on about this, but I think that just establishing that brand matters in whatever way that means in your organization first does a lot to relieve some of that tension.
Jess or Leanne, either of you asked to somehow demonstrate impact / value, and how do you do so?
As it applies to like high level, even like rebrand is top of mind for me. So in the past, just also approaching it more as a hypothesis. It's like that isn't. It's like, okay, we have research and we have insights, and we know it's like based on qualitative insights. It's like we know how our customers view and perceive our brand today, and then just positioning that work as a way to solve a problem. It's like we're doing a rebrand, or we're investing in this area of brand design, for example. Yes, on our side, because we know it's the right thing to do. It feels good, it feels right, and it's better design. But also being able to justify, it's like, here's where our brand perception stands. These are the qualitative insights based on research, and this is where we want to go. And then mapping out tactically how a rebrand or how an investment into the brand would take us there. And honestly, just plus 100 to everything that Erin said. I'm going to look into that brand index. Yeah, that's an amazing way of looking at it as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I think at Webflow, we haven't done too much brand measurement or sentiment analysis outside of our community as much. So like Webflow is unique in the sense that we have a very impassioned community of customers and users that just like geek out about Webflow. They will spend nights and days on Twitter, within forums, like anywhere possible, to just talk about Webflow and how to hack Webflow and doing things in Webflow. And so we're able to like qualitatively assess and gauge brand sentiment via our like impassioned community. We're at a point now where we want to grow past our community. We want to win in the enterprise. We want to win the hearts and minds of freelancers and agencies. And so now we're trying to measure brand insights, sentiments, awareness outside of our comfort zones. And we're just starting to scratch the surface of how we do that in a way that's like as accurate as possible. I think brand awareness and sentiment and valuation is really nuanced.
Interesting question.
Oh, sorry, my Siri thinks.
Siri always likes to get involved.
Thanks, Siri. Thanks for the validation. We're just starting to scratch the surface there, but I'm really excited to. I think in terms of how like the brand studios work contributes to ROI of the company, we can gauge via the campaigns that generate ROI. We can gauge via the sales assisted motions that our team contributes to. There's like the various initiatives and projects that our team contributes to, where we can hypothesize that design has made an impact. There's also times, like we'll ship an ebook about redesigning your website, and then the comments on that that promoted LinkedIn post are commenting about the design or the brand or whatnot. So there's like little qualitative tidbits like that we're starting to piece together, but it's in no means like all encompassing yet. I'm excited for it to start to get there soon.
Excellent. Thanks. Thank you. Tam had a question, very specific. And I know we're a little after the hour. Some people are dropping off. I think we're going to go for about another 10 minutes or so. just FYI. So Tam's question was where copy belongs to set them up for success and growth, right? You're all a bunch of very visually minded people, and we don't want to forget the wordsers in our organizations. So she's seen a variety of approaches: copy as their own team, copy as part of a squad, i.e. campaigns, events. So yeah, how have you worked? How have you organized copy and content within your teams? What have you tried that didn't work maybe? What have you landed on that you think works best? I'll just open it up to the three of you. Any initial thoughts?
I can start. I think it depends on who's leading the overall brand studio team. I have experience working really closely with copywriters. Like for the first half of my career, I worked in advertising where I had a copy partner. And so because I have that experience and on past teams that I've led, I've also worked really closely, if not managed copywriters myself. So I think it really depends on like the type of experience the leader has, whoever's leading those copywriters, and how they're able to contribute to their growth within their specific focus areas. Because I'm not a copywriter by trade, however, I'm only able to guide them so much. And so I think it's important for the copywriters on my team to be connecting with other writers of the company, like our content designers on product. We have writers on the content team that aren't necessarily brand copywriters, but more long form, like blog writers, for example. So it's important for those folks to grow and learn from one another, even if they are technically part of a brand studio team and maybe managing up into someone who has design experience by trade and a little bit of copy experience.
Yeah, I can follow. I think I would love to hear a copywriter speak on this topic. I think they would love to have this for copy. Because I think often it's a great question. I think as I'm digging into it and as we're building our org to be so robust, I'm finding there are copy is not just one type of copywriting. There are editors, there are content designers, there are data journalists, there are many as many kinds of designers there are as many writers, right? And so I think that nuance is important to understand, what's needed for the business. It's a little bit different for each touch point. And so at Zendesk, we have distributed our designers into our functional teams. However, we make sure to invest in the spiritual alignment between them. So things like lunches or things like, making sure they have an offsite, and they can work through what they need. Similar to building design systems, we need to make sure that, the copywriters have what they need to succeed. And then also just making sure to elevate their work and making sure it's we're educating as much as we educate about design, we're educating about the importance of copy and the nuances that go into it. I think often it's it's on the side because it doesn't look like anything, right? And so making sure that it gets as much exposure as the design work. Those are some. Yeah.
Do you have, so it sounds like both design and copy, the functions are embedded into those 5 teams, the identity team, campaigns team. Do you have practice leads? How do you identify who establishes practice standards and quality standards for those disciplines if they're not organized by the discipline? How does that get handled?
Yes, great question. So we're actually still working through that. A lot of that now sits in what is our identity team, and they own the standards for design and writing. However, we're half of our team is very much about storytelling, and so we're looking at perhaps that's held. We're looking at maybe there's an individual contributor, like kind of a principal leader that runs all things, all standards as one role. We're finding that's that's enough for a full-time job. And anyway, so still tinkering with that, but for now, what makes most sense for us is for those standards to live in our identity team.
Cool. Leanne, did you have additional thoughts on copy and content?
Yeah, I love that we're talking about copy, and again, plus one is that spiritual connection, because in my between them, rather than like physical, like, or them being organizationally more directly grouped as one unit within the brand design team or within any team. And in my experience, I've seen that happen where, you know, like I've seen a copy team or writing team on the marketing team work alongside or work together in partnership with a brand design team. One of the things that happens there is like the design process isn't as instinctive as where Jess mentioned, where copy works, like they copy and design work as partners on projects. It felt transactional, where copy, it was kind of like, you know, you pass the project on to design after the copy is written, and they pass it back, and there's just like passing the project back and forth rather than coming up with it together. And then the other observation that I feel like we're all seeing from what I hear is writing happens everywhere in different shapes and forms. It's like it's it's so pervasive in an organization that it's very challenging. And there's, to me, I even like selfishly for design, it's like we're over copy. I think it serves the output more for one of these two, or like for copy to share like that spiritual connection. I'm going to use that so much now. I love it. I'm going to steal it.
Yeah, good.
Rather than them just like having like a clear cut unit within the team.
So I think we'll wrap up with one more question. It's going to be a big one. And I'm going to return to this journey because there was, I think, not just on my part, I got the sense that you all were intrigued kind of by thinking about brand in the context of a broader customer journey. And Erin, when we worked together, we were talking about how does your team inform what the people in customer service are doing, who are touching customers, and how, like, that's a brand touch point, you know, that's often not thought of as a brand touch point, but literally anytime the company is engaging with their customer, brand happens. And at the bottom here, it's almost a little yada yada. Leanne's included brand experience, you know, like no big deal, just like the brand experience. And so my question, the final question here, and would love to get your take on, is how do we have your orgs, and maybe how do we organize brand so that it's not simply confined to this upfront marketing, you know, acquisition, outreach type of work, but recognizing the brand does live throughout an experience from the very beginning to the very end, and you know, through the cycle. And what if anything have you been able to try, succeed, fail at when it comes to organizing in ways that allow your team to have a bit more of that kind of through the journey influence, as opposed to simply being aligned with kind of this big set of green up front?
I can speak to that really quick. So one of the, that's a really good call out, first of all. So thanks for the question. So that's one of the things I was thinking about when it's like with loyalty. It's like if I were, or that was the whole like idea, which I think I need to work on some more with like the gradients. So if this was and I can't, like the brand design person in me, it's like wants to obsess about the colors. So if this was a piece of paper, I would even like, you know, when you kind of connect it,
Turn it into like a
yeah,
Mobius strip or something almost.
yeah,
Yeah.
it would be
itself.
like that was the whole idea with the gradient. It's like a circle. It's like that's what that is what I thought is like loyalty, or like that's what brings continuity to this journey. And then if I were to make improvements to that end, I would definitely break out brand experience into these little subdivisions representing like experimentation or optimization. It's like growth, and then how brand design teams help with customer support. And I have like a little very in the weeds example of how I've done this in the past. Part of my team has been, this is at Grammarly. The team has been focused on partnering with the support team, and what that looked like is we built a like a design system, not system, like maybe more like a visual system for how the product is abstracted. It's like, what is the visual language when the product interface is stylized and or abstracted, and how do we use that to like efficiently and effectively support the support team when telling that or when informing or educating or supporting our users on all things that relate to the product, for example. So yeah, that's just one like tidbit, or like the top of mind example I can think of. But thanks for that.
Sure.
This is a good yeah, I'm gonna work on it some more.
Hey, Erin, have you been able to drive your work into those various frontline customer touch points like we were hoping years ago?
Remember when I wanted to like take over the world? I think, I mean, yes, you caught me at an inflection point, I think, where I think, yes and no. Okay. I think,
it's hard. Like,
what I wanted,
like, it's hard.
Yeah. What I wanted when we worked together was for the whole company to be on brand. And I was seeing so much evidence that we were not on brand, right? However, so much of that was beyond my control, right? And so a lot of that came from like some deep therapy, soul searching, that like, this is not a thing I can control, right? And so, anyway, however, some great things that did happen over the past few years is that a new CMO came in that had, oftentimes a company needs to choose between having like a data-driven, performance-minded CMO and a storytelling, brand-driven CMO, and both are great. Like, and so we Zendesk hired the kind of that storytelling, brand-driven CMO, and the old CMO became our COO. So then it was great that we had both. We had performance and we had the storytelling, right? And so with this new leader, we were able to develop company-wide mission, vision, and values and she became like the leader that stood for that and represented that at the very highest level. So then the CFO was, knew that brand was important, right? And it wasn't just a creative execution. And I actually have stopped using the word brand as much as I used to. Just because it's so lofty and so beyond like what a creative team can actually execute on. So I'm kind of just calling us the creative team who executes and makes sure that things are on brand, but is not trying to like save the company. So I've just kind of reduced that scope since we worked together.
That's fair. And I think there's lessons learned, right? Like there is an ideal when it comes to brand, when you look at, again, the name brands out there, your Apples of the world or whatever, but then there's a reality of what any one of us can actually influence. And something I've been having conversations with design executives, and the constant struggle that every design executive has is to balance idealism, what could be, and pragmatism. What can I actually make an impact on? What can I actually move forward? And to not lose the idealism because it gives you a North Star, but to not get so caught up in it that you can't do your job and you don't, and not to lose sight of the value of just keeping things steadily progressing. Incremental improvement is valuable. And so managing that. Jess, any thoughts on kind of the big B brand and your ability? I mean, the thing that you touched on actually that's kind of related to this is community. And I'm curious kind of how you see your role with such a passionate community where clearly there's a brand connection with this group of very passionate users, but not one that necessarily your team, has incited, right? There's other factors that have led to that passionate engagement. So what's your relationship to that as someone who's a brand steward?
Yeah, I mean, as I look at this diagram, I'm actually thinking of like reworking it to reflect an answer to that response in an accurate way. But I think for brand at Webflow, I would likely take the brand experience, common denominator, and like literally put it under everything the company does. And that includes employer brand, it includes how the recruiting team is hiring new employees, it includes how employees are speaking about Webflow to the world. It also includes how our community and our customers are talking about Webflow with one another into the world too. And up until this point, we haven't really intentionally influenced how they speak about Webflow. And I think it's a really exciting opportunity. If anything, it's been very organic. And because we have these brand evangelists, so to speak, I think it's an exciting opportunity to at least think about brand in a way that empowers this audience and this group of people to do some of the work we're trying to do for us. I think we're just scratching the surface on brand as the entire customer journey, and very similar to what Erin was saying, we recently hired a new CMO who came from Intercom, who is very, very passionate about storytelling, brand storytelling, how brand can influence literally everything we do. He of course cares about the data and the numbers and assisting sales, but CMOs I've worked for in the past have been obsessive about the sales and revenue generating component, and would generally just toss brand and story to the side. So I'm really excited to see what we'll be able to accomplish with our new leader at the helm. And I think, conquering the world is a very accurate way to describe and putting brand experience across an entire org, an entire audience base. It's literally what keeps me up at night. How do we do this perfectly? I don't think any company does. I think we look at the Apples and the Nikes. There was one, I don't know if this is still live online, but I'll never forget, I think it was last year or the year before, I saw that Apple's original iTunes store was still live, and the design was just so old. And I'm even they can't do it perfectly. So there's always little areas, pockets of improvements. Even if you get your brand to the best possible place you think it can be, there will always be more areas to expand into. So it's definitely one of those things where, it's important to identify the opportunity and how we would think about approaching it, but then incrementally, how do we prioritize where to start? How do we educate the company? I think also what I've found is that folks who aren't in a brand world, most of the company that you're working for might not understand what a brand platform is, or why a vision statement matters, or why messaging framework is important. So it's when sharing these things with the company, I think there's a little bit of education that needs to come with it for folks to truly be bought in and understand why the work is important.
Awesome. So clearly the next session will have to be called Brand Conquers the World. And we'll figure out kind of how we set ourselves up for such domination. With that, I think we will wrap up. Leanne, Erin, Jess, thank you so much for your participation, your contributions, to all who've attended, the good questions. In terms of next, what we'll do with this, this has been recorded. That recording will be posted. Leanne will provide a public link to her slides. And we'll make sure those are together. Probably the best way to keep track of all of that, and this is going to sound obnoxious, but follow me on LinkedIn, and I'll post it there. I'll at Leanne, Erin, and Jess on LinkedIn. I'm sure they'd love to keep this conversation going. We were talking about that ahead of time. This is a conversation we all want to make sure doesn't just happen once, but somehow is ongoing. So any other forums that you all are aware of to provide for this conversation, let us know. And with that, be well, everyone. Take care, and talk to you later.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.